Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to hear will be the truth and nothing but the truth? Come to your question.
Sir, you may be seated, and when you're comfortable, you may remove your mask if you wish. Thank you, sir. You're very welcome.
Good afternoon, Captain Bida. Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Thomas Bida, B-I-D-A.
And where are you currently employed?
Captain with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been employed with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department?
22 plus years.
And how long have you been the captain?
It'll be a year next month, actually.
And can you describe for the court briefly what are your job responsibilities and duties as captain?
Yes. In summary, I'm responsible for the day-to-day operation of the Oakland County Jail, including the supervision of employees.
Prior to becoming captain, what was your rank or title at the Sheriff's Department?
I was an executive lieutenant, the jail administrator.
And again, since you've only been in your current position for a year, can you please describe for the court what your job responsibilities were as an executive administrator?
As the executive lieutenant, basically just overseeing some functions of the jail with program services, our clinic, ensuring compliance with Michigan Department of Corrections rules and kind of federal guidelines.
In the last year, Captain Bida, have you had any juveniles lodged in the Oakland County Jail?
Yes.
Approximately how many?
We've had probably 3 to 4 that I remember off the top of my head.
Besides the defendant, do you have any other juveniles lodged in the Oakland County Jail?
At this given time, yes, I do. I've got 1.
The defendant came to your facility on December 1st, is that correct? December 1st of
Yes.
2021.
Yes.
All right. Can you describe for the court what arrangements were made when this defendant arrived at your facility?
Yes. Because he's a juvenile, we had to find selective housing for him. We placed him in the jail clinic on a constant watch. We initiated contact with our casework staff, with our Easter Seals personnel. We had team meetings with our medical staff, with our program services people, and our kitchen staff, to make sure that he's getting the proper medical treatment, the proper food intake.
Okay. Now, I do want to address these one by one. Now, first, you indicated that there was selective lodging. Is that correct?
Selective housing.
Selective housing.
Meaning because of his status, he couldn't go into a general population housing area.
Okay. So where exactly is the defendant housed at?
Specifically,
Yes,
he's in J10, which is in the jail clinic.
in the jail clinic. And can you describe for the court is this a single man cell, a multi-man cell? Can you describe for the court what exactly his cell looks like?
His cell is a cement cell. It's got a glass front door with a window. It has a single bunk. It's got a small half partition wall for privacy and a toilet.
And is he allowed to keep any personal effects inside of his cell?
Yes.
What items, if any, does he have in his personal cell, if you know?
He's purchased some commissary as of late, so he's able to have any kind of legal work, paper, pencils, books, anything that he's eligible to purchase from commissary. He's able to have.
Now, you indicated that you mentioned constant watch. Can you describe for the court what exactly do you mean when you say constant watch?
Constant watch is a watch where we staff a deputy directly in front of that inmate to ensure that the inmate's not hurting themselves. So inmates that are suicidal, highly violent, where both those criteria where we don't have a baseline of what their behavior is, we'll assign a deputy there to make sure that person doesn't hurt themselves until that baseline is established and they have a process in place for counseling and assistance with it.
And so you stated that it's a deputy that's assigned to watch the defendant. Is that correct?
You're correct.
You also stated that Easter Seals was contacted. First, can you explain to the court what exactly Easter Seals is and why they were contacted?
Easter Seals is the medical contractor that provides the psych doctors. And their contact would have came through program services.
Who made the decision to put the defendant on constant watch?
I believe it was, going back to conversations, it was a team decision, involving myself, involving some of the hierarchy in the department, to place him on an immediate watch just because of the circumstance surrounding why he was coming to our jail and the incident that just occurred, until we were able to fully establish the baseline and determine what needs are there for him.
And as we stand here today, February 22nd, is the defendant currently still on constant watch?
No,
Is he still being monitored?
he is.
And can you describe for the court what that monitoring looks like?
The monitoring is what we would call a behavior watch. And every 15 minutes, we have a deputy that will walk by his cell and ensure that he's okay.
And again, these are deputies. These are not lay people within the jail.
Correct. For the 15-minute watch, those are deputies, yes.
Who's responsible for his supervision at the jail?
I would go back and say it's a team approach. So we have program services people, casework staff meets with them several times a week. You have a medical doctor who will follow up with them, a psych doctor. Then you'll have the jail clinic people that will monitor his health. You have our classification unit to be sure that he's housed where he should be housed. Then you have our line staff, our deputies, that are the ones that are directly working the housing unit to be sure that that's everything's proper.
Now, I do want to go back to the inside of the defendant's cell just for a moment. If the defendant needed to make contact with someone outside of his cell, say a deputy or someone at the nurse station, how, if any way, would he contact them?
A couple different ways. There's a call buzzer in there.
Okay.
And also, because in the proximity of where his cell is, the doctor's office is literally right next to it within footsteps. And then the entire nursing stations are to the right. So he can knock on a window, or, when the deputy's making their rounds, he can, assert something like that in there verbally. There's other methods that he can also notify us too.
I do want to pause for a moment, Captain Bida, and I want to talk about what training the deputies in your department or a sheriff's department go through in terms of being able to work inside the jail. Can you describe for that very briefly?
Sure. Everything is certified through the state of Michigan, through the Michigan Sheriff's Training Council, and the licensing is through LCOT's, Local Correction Officers Training. And our academy, totality from classroom experience to in-field experience, is roughly 15 weeks total. And then annually we have different varieties of in-service training. I think it's about 20 hours we have to do. And those in-service trainings can be a variety of different things, from, crisis intervention training to, all the way over to the other extreme of use of force. So it just varies.
Okay. And are there times where the defendant has to be moved out of his cell for one reason or another?
Sure.
And who would be responsible for that movement?
The deputy.
And are your deputies armed?
No, not in the jail, or not. Okay.
Can you describe for the court, and I believe you just mentioned it regarding the training, but what type of training specifically are the deputies trained in if there is an altercation inside the jail?
Use of force.
Let's talk about, when does the defendant get the opportunity to leave his cell?
He would have the opportunity to leave his cell if he was if they were gonna take him into an exam room, if the nursing or medical staff needed to triage him or treat him medically for anything, to utilize the shower, to utilize a phone. When he has visits, he has to be moved to a different location for the technology in order for that to occur.
And if you were standing inside of the defendant's cell, is he able to see out? I know you testified earlier that there's a glass window. In other words, is this glass window, it's not, there isn't some type of film or anything where only on one side one person can see in. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. It's clear.
Okay. Who determines how often the caseworker sees the defendant?
That's usually from casework staff, and usually when someone's on an active, suicide watch, they'll see him daily until they can remove him from that watch. And then the duration and the frequency of that is also shared with their medical provider as well, the psych doctor.
Now, Captain Bida, you previously testified that the defendant, when he initially arrived, he was on constant watch. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if any, documentation or logs were the deputies required to complete during that constant watch?
We have two different log sheets that are in place. We have an observation summary, which is more of a narrative version. We have one that's more of an abbreviated version where we don't write codes, abbreviated codes down for specific times of what they were doing. They were laying or standing.
Now, is this a free form sheet, or is this like a, for lack of a better term, like a fill-in form?
It's a fill-in form.
Okay. And what information is captured on this form?
The date, the time intervals, and then specifically based on a legend of codes, what they're doing, like laying with like L, 15 hours, 30 hours, S for standing, or however the grid is.
Your Honor, I'm showing Defense Counsel 14A, permission to approach the witness.
Yes.
I've shown you what has been marked and previously admitted as People's Exhibit. It's actually marked as 14A. Can you identify that document?
Yes, this is our active suicide summary sheet.
And again, what is the purpose of that document?
It's to document description codes at specific time intervals of what someone is doing on their suicide watch.
And there are several initials on those documents, correct?
So there's two sergeants that conducted rounds, and those are the signatures that are on the very top page that
You also mentioned the observation sheet, is that correct?
yes.
As you fan through that, do you see that observation sheet that you previously mentioned? I believe it's the second or third page down.
Yes.
And again, what is the purpose of that document?
This is more of a observation summary sheet where there's more room for specific comments, more of an elaboration than what the descriptive codes are.
And what type of information would be required in the observation sheet?
It could be anything, like he was moved to, for fingerprinting, had a conversation with deputy, consumed these following items, for lunch or breakfast or whatever. So it's just more of a detail than what the description codes are.
And were those active suicide sheets, were those required during the constant watch?
That's part of our process.
And are those logged somewhere within the jail?
These logs, the original logs?
Yes.
Yes.
And are those logs continuing today?
These logs, yes.
On a commission to approach the witness.
Yes.
Captain Bida, I'm handing you what has been marked and previously admitted as People's Exhibit number 15. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's like these are copies from a logbook that we used.
Okay.
As constant watch.
Now, we've previously discussed the active suicide summary sheet. Can you describe for the public what the purpose of that log is?
Purpose for this log was to serve 2 points, basically. One would be for a pass on, more so for the deputies, so they know what is going on. And in retrospect to where the constant watch was, as opposed to where the deputy's workstation is that has a computer, we utilized some of that information, and what we were able to put the information into the IMAX system.
Okay, so there's a lot there. So
Yes.
first, let me talk about the log. Is that log continuing?
This log is not,
And why is that?
because the constant watch was terminated.
So is it fair to say that log was only kept because of the constant watch?
Yes.
All right. And that log there, is that a form sheet such as the active suicide summary sheet, or is that more of a freehand notebook?
It's a freehand notebook.
Okay. And once that information is placed in that notebook, how or what method is it transferred? I think you testified to the IMAX system.
Right, so if there was anything that was noteworthy at that time, whenever a deputy had an opportunity, they would go to the workstation and transfer that information.
And you also testified that it was basically, I think your verbiage was a pass on. Do you mean from one shift to the next?
Yes, or who's ever coming in to relieve that person at that time. So deputies, they have to have a bathroom break, lunch break, and it just, after a while, sitting and staring at a person, we need to rotate staff. So the staff member is fully aware of what's going on.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness?
Yes.
Captain Vital, I'm showing you what has been previously marked and admitted as People's Exhibit number 16. Do you recognize that document?
Yes,
And what is that document?
this is actually what we would call a event history. And this is a printout from our jail management system, IMAX.
And so the exhibit that we were just previously speaking with, that's the computer system that those notes would have been put in. Is that correct?
Correct, or some of them, yes.
Have you had an opportunity to review some of the notes listed in People's Exhibit number 16?
Periodically, I've looked through the screen.
All right. And I want to go back to reasons for which the defendant would be allowed out of his cell. What is the rec time situation at the jail right now?
Currently, rec is suspended.
And why is that?
Because of COVID. So we suspended rec in its entirety, I want to say, right before Christmas. And we have not reinstated rec collectively across the board for our facility yet.
Okay. Prior to the rec time being suspended, was the defendant offered any recreational time?
As far as my recollection was, he was.
Do you know if he participated in that rec time?
I don't think he did, if my memory is right.
Okay. Is it fair to say that inmates can refuse to participate in rec time?
Yes,
Okay. Can inmates refuse to take a shower?
yes,
In fact, did the defendant in this case, if he refused to take a shower for a period of time?
yes.
Does the defendant have access to any educational opportunities?
Yes.
How so?
There's an inmate tablet system And on the inmate tablet system, there's different resources. And one of the resources available is education, K through 12 education through Khan Academy.
Okay, now let's talk about this tablet. How does the defendant request usage of that tablet?
He just asks the deputy, and the deputy will provide him with the tablet.
Okay, is that tablet specific to him or is it shared amongst other inmates?
It's shared amongst other inmates.
And is there a time usage, meaning is he only allowed the tablet for, say, an hour a day or 10 minutes a day?
As far as I know, there's not a 10-minute time limit. There is a time limit based on demand. So if there's several requests in that area, we may only have a handful of tablets, then we have to divide them up equally. But I haven't heard that that's been a problem, at least in the jail clinic.
Okay, now on the educational portion on this tablet, what service or app is offered?
Khan Academy?
Khan Academy. And what other apps are listed on this tablet?
There's stuff for books, movies. There's a thing for like a personal calendar. There's something to view his mail, photographs, to send a kite, to grievances, law library. I think that may be.
All right, now as an administrator, are you able to track his activity on that tablet?
I'm able to go in and look to see what he's looked at or what he's participated in. There's just some things based on the platform that I'm not able to.
Okay.
But
And prior to arriving here today, were you able to determine whether or not the defendant has accessed the Khan Academy application on the tablet?
I was not.
Okay. And actually, I probably should clarify, this tablet is shared amongst other inmates, correct?
Correct, but each person has their own personal sign.
Thank you, that's what I was trying to get to. Has the defendant been able to access any games or email?
Yes, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention, there is games and there's a messaging component to this as well.
Okay, let's talk about the games first. How are these, who determines what games are on this tablet?
When we entered into a contract with Smart Communications, they sent us a host of games, and someone in the agency vetted those games and made a determination if they're appropriate, and along with the movies and whatnot. So that was included in the tablet.
So these games that are on this tablet, are they specific for this defendant or are they available to any other inmate in the jail?
They're available to any other inmate in the jail.
Now, again, specifically, as an administrator, were you able to determine if the defendant has accessed any games through his tablet?
Yes.
Were you able to determine if he's read any books through his tablet?
I don't recall seeing books.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge of whether or not he has read any books at all since he's been confined at the Oakland County Jail?
My understanding is that he's read some Harry Potter books that were given to him from the library, but specifically other titles, not off the top of my head.
Okay. You also mentioned that the defendant is able to receive mail. There's two types of mail, is that correct? There's email and then what we would traditionally call as snail mail, is that correct?
So, yes, the email's not like I can send an email to anybody in this room. There's a specific process that has to happen.
Can you explain that process?
So the process is that he has to send an invitation to, let's say, yourself. You would return, would say yes, you would accept that, and then you would have to contact Smart Communications and create an account. And then at that point, the billing would go back and forth. There's a cost for this message, these connections.
Okay. Now, is the defendant able to receive messagings from individuals from whom he doesn't know?
Yes.
And how does that happen based upon the example you just gave? I guess I'm a little confused.
I'm sorry. There's a vetting process that's put in place, and in theory, that should not happen. So I apologize. That was mine.
No, that's okay. So the vetting process, can you explain what that vetting process is?
It's basically just a verification and a smart communications. An account is set up, and there's payment that's available, and then they allow that to occur. And
What is a commissary account, Captain Bida?
commissary account is Mr. Crumbley will have what we call a trust account. And the trust account is like a bank account, checking account. And one of the things in the jail that they can do is they can purchase commissary.
And what exactly is commissary?
Commissary is anything from paper to shampoo to different sources of food, chips, stuff like that, like a canteen.
Okay. When the defendant arrived at your facility on December 1st, did he have any money in his commissary account?
My recollection was he did not.
Does the defendant have money on his commissary account today?
Yes.
In regards to the amount of money he has in his commissary account, how would you classify that in relationship to the other inmates at the facility?
It's pretty excessive.
I'm sorry, you said pretty excessive?
Pretty excessive, yes.
Who's able to put money on his commissary account?
Pretty much anybody.
What, if anything, has the defendant purchased with the money in his commissary account?
To my knowledge, paper, pencils, deodorant.
Is there any limit to what he can purchase, meaning as long as it's within the items available to purchase?
Correct. No, it's not.
In fact, does the defendant have any restrictions at all since he's been at your facility?
No.
Does he have phone privileges?
Yes.
Besides being able to watch movies on the tablet, does he have access to any other devices that have a screen?
There's a TV just adjacent to his cell.
Is he able to control that TV?
No.
Who controls that TV?
Deputy does.
Is the defendant allowed professional visits, meaning either from clergy, attorneys, or professional visits from a therapist or psychiatrist?
Yes.
If necessary, would he be provided medical treatment?
Absolutely.
Who, if anyone, does the inmate, or excuse me, who, if anyone, does this defendant have contact with?
He would have contact with, of course, deputies. He would have contact with medical staff, including his psych doctor, caseworker. That's pretty much it. Maybe someone who came and delivered his commissary to him. But I can't think of anybody else. Inside the jail, and then of course his attorneys when they want to visit him.
Now, again, his cell is located within the clinic area, correct?
Correct.
Is that clinic area open 24 hours?
It is.
Is there someone always at the nurse's station?
Usually, yes.
Let's talk about the defendant's meals. How are his meals delivered to him?
Usually a deputy will bring it to him.
And initially, was there a concern about his food or lack thereof, his food intake?
Yes, there was.
And what was that?
There was a concern because he dropped his body weight. And the jail clinic, in conversations with Caremark, came up with an alternative meal plan for him to get him to eat, because the analysis was that he just wasn't consuming his food.
And it sounds like that is something that the jail took upon themselves to make that change. Is that correct?
You're correct.
Since the defendant has been housed in your facility, have there been issues or concerns brought to your attention regarding whether it's his cell upkeep or his food or any other reason, any other thing?
The only thing that I recall was, of course, the discussions about his food. I haven't been alerted to anything real significant through the casework staff. We had to move him from one cell to the next because there was a concern about what he was doing, or if he was able to access something, which they found, the ceiling was missing. So we had to, move him over, but short of that.
One moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Captain Bida, due to COVID, let me ask, are the inmates supplied some type of cleaning supplies by any chance?
Yes.
And was the defendant supplied those cleaning supplies?
He has the ability to ask for them at any time. We don't, because he's in a single cell, we don't house them or give them directly and let him keep them in the cell.
And to the best of your knowledge, Captain Bida, are the defendant's needs being met since he's been housed at the Oakland County Jail?
I'd say absolutely.
No further questions.
Thank you. May the attorneys and Captain, if you could approach, please. Thank you for that. Ms. Lofton?
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. If I ask you something that you don't understand, just let me know and I'll try to ask it a different way, okay? What is the maximum occupancy at the Oakland County Jail?
1,100 and some change.
Do you know how many inmates you currently have housed?
931 as of this morning.
Now, you stated that it was kind of a team decision when Mr. Crumbley was brought to your facility to place him on a constant watch. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you stated that the purpose of that is to establish a baseline behavior. You obviously don't know the inmate. You know that his charges obviously are serious ones, but you don't know his day-to-day behavior. Fair to say?
It's fair to say.
Okay. And he was on this constant watch until about halfway through January of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The records indicate that the log sheet stops on January 14th of 2022, and I think that's the one from constant watch. So is it fair to say around that time he was taken off constant watch?
Yes, January 14th.
Okay. And who made that decision? Was it again a team decision to take him off of the constant watch?
Was.
So that's not something that the caseworker can decide herself?
The caseworker can make recommendations.
While he was on constant watch, he was not able to purchase Commissary, correct?
Correct.
So he's only been able to purchase Commissary since being taken off of constant watch.
Correct.
And he is now on something called behavioral watch, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, and you were asked by the prosecutor if you were made aware of any issues involving Mr. Crumbley, and I believe that you stated the only issues that you could really remember was the food issue, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If an inmate was having behavioral issues, was not listening to deputies, was doing things that were prohibited, is that something that would be placed in either the constant watch logs or some other log that the jail keeps?
Yes.
All right, I want to talk about, well, let me back up. You stated that there is one other juvenile currently housed at the Oakland County Jail, is that correct?
Correct.
And there is no contact between that juvenile and Mr. Crumbley, correct?
Well, their cells are right next to each other.
Okay. Are they allowed to interact with each other?
Not like this. I mean, they can talk through their cell. I mean, they're right next to each other, so they can probably stand at their cell door, talk to one another.
Is that something that would be encouraged or discouraged by the deputy?
We wouldn't encourage that.
Okay. So besides leaving the cell to have a visit with his attorneys in the I block, or taking a shower, or going potentially into a clinic room, Mr. Crumbley is in his cell 24 hours a day, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You stated that recreation for the entire jail was suspended in December. Do you remember when in December?
It was right around Christmas.
Okay. So if you stated that Mr. Crumbley was offered some sort of recreation, but he declined that?
Correct.
Would that be noted in any of his jail records?
It should be an IMAX.
So if you were to reinstate recreation, how would the recreation be achieved for Mr. Crumbley, since he has to obviously be kept away from adults?
He would go to recreation by himself.
And what does that look like? It's a gym, it's a room,
It's a gym.
Is there any idea when recreation will begin, or are you still trying to figure out the COVID situation?
We're hoping to have a firmer idea probably in about another week as the COVID numbers decrease.
Was there any staffing shortage at the jail due to COVID?
Sure, yes.
Do you know how many deputies are employed actually at the jail?
Roughly 250.
I want to talk about the cell that Mr. Crumbley is housed in. So you described it as completely cement except the front part, which is glass, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a reason that the light is kept on 24/7, the light directly above his bed?
It's in a medical unit. It's a high visibility cell.
So that is not something that can be turned off. It's constantly daylight, correct?
It's constantly daylight.
Okay. And he does not have a window to like the outside, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, the clinic that he's housed in, it is still used as an actual clinic for other adult inmates, correct?
Correct.
So there are adults that come in and out of that clinic, just not in and out of the defendant's cell, fair to say?
Well, they come in from a totally different area than where the defendant is, so he wouldn't have contact.
The prosecutor asked you some questions about money that was deposited into his account, and you stated that he has a significant balance. Mr. Crumbley has no control over who deposits money into his account, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if someone that he didn't like was to deposit money, it's not as though he can say, no, thank you, and that money would be returned, correct? You stated that there is a TV that he could potentially see from his cell, but that he doesn't have the ability to control it, correct?
Correct.
Currently in the jail, I know that there was some COVID issues in the kitchen. Are the inmates receiving hot food or cold food?
Cold food right now. Thursday, that's supposed to change.
And what does cold food consist of?
It can consist of sandwiches to MREs.
MREs are like military grade.
Correct.
Due to his age, obviously, adolescent boys especially require a higher calorie diet than an average inmate. Has anything been done to achieve making sure that Mr. Crumbley is able to take in the appropriate amount of calories per day?
My understanding through Aramark, which is our meal contractor, that in consultation with our dietitian, the meal that is being provided to him meets that caloric intake, as well as they provide him what they call the adolescent meal, which is a supplement that it's like a snack bag supplement with milk, fruit, stuff with his meals. So the answer is yes.
I have no further questions, but I believe Ms. Hott may have a few. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hott?
Captain, you would agree that the Oakland County Sheriff's Department has custody and control of Ethan at this time, correct?
Yes.
And you have since December 1st of 2021, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you aware of the laws concerning education of juveniles in the state of Michigan?
Yes.
And you're aware that you're required to have him attend school daily, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. At this time, I don't believe that the jail is responsible, and I believe that's pursuant to the statute. I understand we're proceeding on 1101B3, but quite frankly, I think that's an improper question because pursuant to the statute, the jail is not responsible for his education.
Response, Ms. Hott?
He said he was aware of the law. I asked, was he aware that they had the responsibility? He's either aware or he's not.
I agree.
That was the question.
Thank you. I agree. Sir, you may answer to the extent that you are actually aware you have personal knowledge. With that being said, Ms. Hott, if you could re-ask your question.
Sure, certainly, Your Honor. Are you aware that the jail, not you personally, as a person or entity having control and charge of a person between the ages of 16 and 18 is required to provide daily education?
My understanding of it is yes, that we are responsible with specific parameters, and we've gone through those, and we're currently still working through that.
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. Is the jail certified or qualified under Michigan law as an alternative education program?
Not for juveniles.
How about a strict discipline academy?
I'm not familiar with what you're discussing.
How about a school of excellence organized as a cyber school?
No.
And do you have any teachers, certified teachers on staff or accessible to you to come in and teach school to your juvenile inmates?
Not for juveniles, no.
And you mentioned this Khan Academy program that is on the tablet, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware that that's a supplemental to normal schooling program that doesn't count towards a diploma or any type of a degree and is not accredited?
No.
Have you ever used it?
I have not.
So you don't know that schooling is, 5, 7, 10-minute videos about a certain school subject, correct?
I have not used it.
And you don't know that it doesn't have any sort of high school literature or English program, correct?
It was my understanding that it does, but
And that's on the iPad that's shared, correct?
it's not an iPad, it's a tablet.
A tablet,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
Tablet. And would Mr. Crumbley have access to that tablet for, say, 8 hours a day?
He would have access to that tablet. I can't say verbatim that it's an 8-hour block of time that he would have, but he would have access to it for a significant amount of time.
And you said the time was limited, though, correct?
I said it could be limited based on what the demand is.
Now, have you or anyone under your direction met with Mr. Crumbley to show him how to use that program?
I personally have not.
And you've not directed anybody to do that?
I personally have not.
So you don't even know if Mr. Crumbley can access that program, do you?
It's right there in the tablet with all the other options that are available.
So if I press that on the tablet and get a message that says, error, you cannot connect, you wouldn't know about that?
Well, then I would assume that he would bring that problem up to a deputy so we can have that addressed.
Now, other than you, is there anyone else that monitors his tablet usage?
I can't unequivocally answer that question. I don't know.
And if he were to be able to access this program and had questions about the schooling or education provided in the Khan Academy program, are there any resources there for him to get answers to questions he may have?
I'm not familiar enough with the Khan Academy.
Have you been in communication, or to your knowledge, anyone on your staff or at your direction with any school district to supply him instructional materials, supplies, textbooks, assignments, things like that to fulfill the Michigan requirements regarding education?
Our corporation council's been involved in this.
Anybody specifically?
Yes,
And who would that be?
Mary Ann Yergay.
And pursuant to those conversations, other than this tablet program, to your knowledge, nothing has been provided to Ethan for education purposes, correct?
You're correct.
And so as he sits there in jail, he's not getting any sort of high school credit toward a diploma, correct?
Not at this given moment. No, ma'am.
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McKelvey, did you have any questions?
I do, just a quick. Good afternoon, Captain Bida. The cell that you just mentioned he's in with the light that's on 24/7, are all of the cells there that would house a juvenile, they all have the same lighting issue, or are there cells he could be in where he doesn't have a light on 24/7?
In that row of cells, those lights are fixed. They stay on
Is that the only place he can be in there?
at this point. At this time, yes.
When he was on that constant watch and couldn't have commissary, which sounds like it would be math-wise about 6 weeks or so, he wouldn't have access to toothbrush, toothpaste, shampoo in the jail unless you can pay for it. You don't have it?
That's factually incorrect.
Well, that's the question I'm asking.
Yeah,
So
so no, we would provide toothbrush, toothpaste, soap.
so all those things are
The
provided.
necessities to.
It's not part of commissary.
Correct.
Because you had testified earlier, the toothpaste and toothbrush would be in commissary. So the basic stuff they
I
get.
didn't testify to that. What I said was that those are options to purchase. There's hygiene items that are available for hygiene items such as that, for people that don't have access to commissary, we hand out upon intake as well as replace upon request.
Okay. Well, and I don't think, I didn't mean to offend you. That wasn't clear then, just basically said commissary. And so if somebody can't afford anything there, at least the basic necessities of hygiene
ma'am.
is given to them regardless of how much or how little money is in their commissary.
Yes, ma'am.
account.
Absolutely.
And soap is one of those elements, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there towels, are towels provided and then
Yes.
I assume picked up and go to laundry or whatever? They get a towel a day or?
No, I believe it's once a week and they do their exchanges with their uniforms.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I did have a question, Captain. He's currently under a behavior watch. Is there any indication of how long this behavior watch would last or could last?
Probably just based on what our circumstances are and who he is and the high profileness of it, that we would maintain that for a while. And that's nothing abnormal when we have high profile inmates. We maintain these behavioral watches or for other circumstances as well. But
Okay.
I hope I answered.
You did. Thank you, sir. Based on that, I know you had finished your question. Any follow-up questions based on my questioning
No, Your Honor.
to defense? And I know you all have rebuttal. Any rebuttal?
Your Honor, I just have a few things I would like to clarify.
Sure.
Captain Bida, to the best of your knowledge, Ethan's parents are still his legal guardians, correct?
Yes,
Means they would still be responsible for his education, correct?
correct. Regardless of their incarceration status or not. Correct.
In regards to the tablet usage, the defendant has been able to access games, correct?
Correct.
He's been able to access his emails, correct?
His messaging, yes, ma'am.
He's been able to access his mail that is scanned in, correct?
Correct.
And all that is on the same platform as the Khan Academy, correct?
Correct.
You were very specific when you said the meal that is provided to the defendant. So I want to talk about the meal that is being provided to him. Is he getting the same meal as other defendants in the Oakland County Jail?
No, he's receiving a kosher meal.
Is that also a cold meal or some other type of meal?
Right now, it's a cold meal.
But that kosher meal is separate and distinct from the meals that the other inmates are receiving, correct?
Correct.
Are other inmates receiving an adolescent pack?
Just the other juvenile. That's in jail.
And why is the defendant in the role, referring specifically to the question that Ms. Deb McKelvey asked regarding the defendant's cell and the light that's on. And I believe you testified it's because of the role or the cell that he's currently assigned to. Why is he assigned to that role?
He's assigned to that role specifically because of his status as a juvenile and its sight and sound separation from adult prisoners.
Captain Vita, has the Oakland County Jail ever detained a school shooter?
No.
Is it fair to say that as a facility, you're still working out the details?
Yes.
Are you concerned at all about the defendant's safety while he is in the care and custody of your facility?
Absolutely not.
Have nothing further.
Thank you.
I do just have a
Just
follow-up.
very briefly.
Of course.
Thank you.
You testified earlier that you were able to log on and see that Mr. Crumbley was accessing games and other things, but you were not able to verify that he was actually logging on to Khan Academy, correct?
Correct.
You were just asked, has there ever been a school shooter that's been housed there? Currently, there's people charged with multiple counts of murder, rape, armed robbery, and other serious life offenses. Fair to say?
Sure.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Any reason why this witness should not be excused?
None, Your Honor.
None, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You may step down. You're excused for today. Please don't talk about your testimony with anyone.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please return to the file. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.